everyone, and welcome to the Social Recruiting Show. You'll notice we are missing someone very special, Mrs. Katrina Collier, who is traveling and doing some work in Africa and having an awesome time, so we do miss you. But thank you, Katrina Kibben, who is stepping in from 3 Ears Media. She's been an awesome co-host, stepping in lots of times when we've needed some help, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And today we're talking to Tennille Folk, who works at Stryker doing talent branding. She's Senior Director of Talent Branding and Recruitment Marketing. Is that correct?
You got it. Yep.
Awesome. Well, congrats on your recent promotion, but we'll get into that. But thank you for joining us today.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to be here in sunny Kalamazoo, Michigan. So you can't see it outside,
We're
but
all over the country today.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's the end of the summer.
Awesome.
Yeah. Best time of year to be in Michigan, right?
It really is. It is. The leaves are about to change. It's going to get really pretty around here.
So nice. Same with us. So where do you think we should start? Should we talk about how we got into it, or should we talk about the field in general?
I think maybe we start with our stories so we can all get to know each other and everyone can get to know us, and then maybe talk about what we do now. And I'm sure questions will come in as we go.
Oh, absolutely. Good. Tennille, do you want to jump in first then? How you got into recruitment marketing? And
I get it. I'm the rookie here, so I have to go first.
You're the guest. Yeah. I'll go first if you really want to, since I'm technically a guest, but really you're the spotlight here.
Okay, yeah. So when Audra and I were kind of talking about what do you want to talk about? What's this going to be all about? And I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, I probably have maybe an untraditional path into this. But then I was thinking about it, I was like, I bet most people have an untraditional path into this too, because it's still relatively new in the world of talent acquisition for sure. And even digital marketing, I would say, is still kind of new in the world, right? So I'll give you kind of my sordid past into recruitment marketing. I actually have a hotel management degree. I went to school and I was going to live in New York City, and I was going to work at the Waldorf, and I was going to shop at Saks Fifth Avenue and have a sweet apartment in the city and whatever. And I was so naive in the world of college graduates and what life was really like, which I'm sure most people are, right? It was like a culture shock and so I did not end up in New York City, and I did not end up at the Waldorf, but I did have some really fun jobs along the way. And I actually really love the hotel industry. It is fascinating. It is, it's a lot like recruiting. You just don't know what you're going to get because you're working with people every day, and their stories are very different, and what they're passionate about is very different too. So it was really cool. I worked for a couple of big chains. I worked for, I think my favorite was a casino resort. And if you have ever been to a casino, you know that it is nonstop all night long. And I have some very interesting stories I could tell you.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll call it. Yeah, that's probably the nice way to say it. So, and I was a 20-something, and I was just living the life, and I was, I could work the nights, and so I could sleep a little bit during the day and hit the beach and do that whole thing. So it was fantastic.
Yeah, great.
It was great. It was great. I highly recommend it. Where things kind of changed was all of a sudden, I got married, and we started talking about a family. And then you go from an industry that's 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And now you've got other people you're responsible for. And my priorities changed. So I was looking for something different, something that gave me a little more balance in life, and ended up at Stryker. And my husband works here too. And he was coming home and talking about how great the culture was and how they really take care of their people. And I was kind of actively disengaged in my job and was like, shut up about how great your new job is and whatever. So it didn't take long to get sucked in. When I started at Stryker, I worked in regulatory affairs. So when you work in a medical device company or a pharma company or healthcare in general, we're a regulated industry by the FDA. And so the regulatory affairs people are the ones that make sure that our products are approved by the government in order to be safe and effective to use, which was a lot of research, and it was deep digging, and it was really cool because I got to work with a lot of different people and functions in the business. I got to see the product and work with customers and talk with them. But a lot of it was just sitting at my cube like all day long. And what I figured out is that I really missed people. I had been in the hotel industry for so long and out front with people so long that sitting in a cube just wasn't for me anymore. And ended up in recruiting. And so like applied for a job as a corporate recruiter, moved over to the corporate office. And then for the last 10 years have been in some sort of HR function, but mostly recruiting. I just always kept coming back to it. I just love it. I just love the opportunity to help people find what's their passion and help them find their way. So I think it was in like maybe 2015, maybe 14 even, I went to LinkedIn's Talent Connect conference. And,
dun, dun.
Yeah, dun, dun, dun. And man, did they put on a show. And I think there were two big topics that year, which were kind of the beginning of employment branding and big data. Like those were the two big tracks that year. And so I came back, and at that time I was working in executive recruiting, and I came back and I was like, we've got to do this. Like, this is amazing. And I really, I love social media. I'm on Facebook all of the time. And I have so many followers on LinkedIn. This is going to be so cool. And so I came back and talked to my boss and was like, put together a whole business case on why I thought we should have this. And he looked at it. And I bet this story probably rings true for so many people, which is like, yeah, that's awesome. Why don't you do that on top of the job you already have?
Yes.
Right. So then I put on another hat and started dipping my toe in the water there. It is not all sitting on your phone all day, hanging out on social media, right? I think probably your audience knows that better than anyone. It's so much more than that. So I did that for a couple of years, and then we were able to make the business case to our CHRO that we really needed to build out talent branding as a separate function within TA and really establish it, because that's the way it's going. I mean, the industry is going that way, which is probably why we all have really cool jobs. So I basically got to write my dream job description. Nice. And yeah, it's the best. I tell people all the time, like, I have the best job in Stryker, and I probably shouldn't say that to the people that work here, but I think it's true.
Gonna ruin those employer brand videos. Well, I have the best job. You have the best job.
I can fight over it.
That's right. So in 2017, I kind of stepped into full-time talent branding and recruitment marketing. I've been telling people 2017 was like the year of building the brand of brands, because it's all new to an organization, which is also a really cool opportunity, because it's not often you walk into a Fortune 500 company and get to build something that's never been done before. Good point. So I feel very fortunate to be able to put my stamp on something too. And then from there, it got really, really popular at the end of 2017. And now I'm in a position where I get to build out a team too. So cool. It is very cool. I'm very excited.
I know we're supposed to be telling our stories, but now I have a question. So clearly what you're doing is working, since you're building out a global team and hiring a bunch of people. So maybe we can talk through some of like what did you do first when you were like, okay, I'm going to build a brand? What was your kind of first step?
Yeah. So if I think back to the business case that I put together first, right? We're a company of numbers-driven people and performance-driven people. So we talk in numbers all the time. So for me to even start having that conversation, I needed some really good data to prove why we needed to do this. So I spent a lot of my late night hours digging on Google. I leaned on my friends at LinkedIn a lot for some data there. And that was probably a shameless plug, and it was not meant to be, but they really did help me kind of build that out a little bit more. I spent some time on CEB's Recruiting Leadership Council page and pulled some data from there. And I think that was the game changer. I am fortunate that Stryker has a pretty good brand, me just walking into it from a consumer perspective. So in the world of medical device, we're probably one of the top 3 players, depending on the market that you're looking at. So in that world, in that space, we had a really good brand. So we were able to, or I was able to start building on what we already had. I'm also really lucky. We have talent branding where I sit, which is totally focused on candidate. We also have a corporate communications team that has employment branding in there. And so their focus is more kind of the internal stuff that we do, but also marrying that to bigger pieces, right? Like they owned the EVP project for us last year. They had the budget. I sat on the project team, but it was a great partnership. And so I had a resource there that could help me kind of bridge that consumer brand with that employment brand at the same time. But where I was really passionate about getting started, and what I think we're seeing a lot of in industry is the people stories. So prior to me kind of stepping into the job, a lot of our social media content and the things that we were talking about were not necessarily employee facing. And so when I started, I really wanted to showcase what it's like to work here and why people are passionate about it. Because when people get here, they don't leave. Awesome. And they always talk about the people that they get to work with is why they get up every day. They get to work with their friends every day. So I wanted to showcase that. So I put together, my probably very first thing in 2017 was putting together the Global Talent Branding Steering Committee, which is a really long title. And I pulled in people from around the globe and brought them together. So we have someone in France. We have someone in Germany, Ireland, India, Australia, China, Japan, and the US.
But not in recruitment, right? They're people in the field.
Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them are HR leaders, some of them are recruiters, some of them are marketing people. And it was really, for me, it was like, who's passionate around this, but who also understands a little bit about the candidate experience too, right? Because I wanted to have that lens if they could. But it was also great to get some other perspectives from HR and stuff too. So we bring them together, and once a month we get together on the phone, either late at night US time or early US time, and trying to find a spot for that group is difficult. So a lot of them were giving up time at home and things like that to make it happen. But we started to be able to collect global content that we'd never had before. It was very US centric before that. And so getting their help and their excitement, and now it's almost like having a tiny group of talent ambassadors too, right? Like they're collecting content for me, but they're also out there talking about the cool stuff that we're working on. And I think that's a lot of where the requests started coming in, is because now we've got this global brand thing going on and people were getting excited about it. So that was step number one. And we actually got an award from the talent acquisition team for best collaborative team last year. So it was really cool. Awesome. Yeah.
Well, because I think that collaboration is so fundamental to actually being able to have an authentic, and I know I'm using I just used 2 buzzwords in one sentence, so
I'm going to mark it on my bingo here.
No, I do love a good bingo, but I think when you have people who are highly empathetic, who can all contribute to your story, it's so obvious to the candidate that they're looking at something real. And I think when you have other teams acknowledging the impact and the care is kind of the core value, you're like, you will obviously have like really impactful stuff.
Yeah, and that's more important than production value or spend, but that actually seeing that people really mean it.
Yep. And it just, I think it feels so much more, to your point, genuine when it's coming from people who are really vested in what they do. And there are so many great stories out there that I would have never been able to dig into in India or Australia or China without the help of that team. So it was a huge impact. Yeah.
Now, was that your idea, or did you hear it back from someone else, or?
It was kind of my brainchild in the beginning. I was originally going down the path of creating this talent ambassadors program, but because we're a regulated industry and there are so many rules about things we can say and that we can't say, I could never give over the power to a group of people to just go out there and represent us from the very beginning. I'm still hoping to get there someday, but we're not there yet. So I knew I had to control the message. So there had to be a way to pull in the content and the stories that I can then readjust and push out in a different way. So that was kind of, was originally the talent ambassador. And then I was like, well, what if we just have a group of really passionate people around this that I can bring in together. So yeah.
Genius.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I like personally, when we do recruitment marketing projects, we do a minimum of 10 hours of interviews. Whether, and because I feel this deeply, like I cannot tell someone's story without hearing them tell me the story.
Yeah.
And not one person's perspective. I can't read other people's research because I don't know how they asked the question. You know, like I don't know if maybe this person was having an off day and they just weren't into it, or you're getting a lot of one-off answers and someone like fluffed the responses, which I have seen in research before, right? Where you're like, did they really say that? Like the tone completely changed in the like first 3 sentences to the last 3 sentences.
Yeah.
But having those, like from my perspective, when I can have it in the way someone says it, that changes it. It's not like you were talking about production value, Audra. Like I forget about production value. I have humans. Like, I can do anything with that because you can figure out the story from there.
Yep.
It's really easy to figure out what to do when you know what they care about.
Yep.
And do you find that what people care about is significantly different from each region?
Good point.
Actually, no. And I think it has to do with what our company does. And we're so mission driven, right? So we make medical devices that I'll pull out my EVP, right? Like we're improving lives. But it is true. And when you talk to people who work here, they feel that deeply. And one of the things I used to tell candidates when I was recruiting is it wouldn't matter if you walked into Cork, Ireland, or you walked into, New South Wales, Australia, or you walked into California's office. If you ask people what motivates them and what gets them excited, it's the people and it's the stuff that we do. And the other thing when I was collecting stories too, which is so interesting, is that they were telling stories about our product and how it helped, like their grandma has a new hip, or their son was in an emergency cot the other day because they got hurt on the soccer field. Or there was this great story of someone on our team in talent management who just happened to be on a plane and was sitting next to someone, and you know how you just kind of start having chatter, and that woman asked where she worked. Yep. Now I put in my earbuds and I usually go right to sleep, so I'm not going to be that person. So if you sit on me next to me on a plane, I'm sorry, but other people have conversation, right? And so when she told the person where she worked, that woman literally got tears in her eyes and was like, my husband had a stroke, and went into this huge story about how Stryker products had saved him. And it was like, she's telling the story and getting tears in her eyes, and all of us are hearing the story and getting tears in our eyes. And so the message was always kind of the same, which I think is the point of a great EVP too, right? Is that it looks and feels the same no matter where you are. I'll say what we did find is that the drivers for candidates are very different. So we have to be really cognizant of not just telling them what we think they want to hear, but backing it up and thinking about what it is that they want to hear. Because we'll always tell our story first. But if comp and benefits is more important to you, then we need to back that up and rethink what that message is going to be.
How did you find out the drivers for the candidates? Did you do your own research, or was it just market intelligence?
Yeah, mostly market intelligence. And then I would say the gut feel of the recruiters, like what are they hearing? Like, because that global talent branding steering committee is global and they generally are in touch with the recruiters. Like we can talk about like, what are you guys hearing? What are you seeing? And then it also goes back to our own kind of numbers too, right? Thinking about, if I think about, we struggle for sales reps in Japan because we don't have a big brand there yet. And so looking at like why new hires took the job gave us some good ideas on that as well.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Steve Levy is the person who taught me this. I have little like sticky notes on my desk that remind me of like, you know, little things. So for one thing for me is to always slow down. But the other thing is to stop talking and ask questions. And Steve Levy said that to me like years ago. And I still have the Post-it. It should always be 80-20. Them talking and you listening.
Love it.
Yes, the ring. I got married. That was the second ask. But I think you just hit on a really good point of like, you have to let the recruiters guide your recruitment marketing. Like they have to have input. So how do you collect that input? How do you kind of give them a platform to say, this is what's important and this isn't?
Yeah. So last year I did kind of a mini focus group with recruiters kind of here and there across the globe. The focus of that originally was around, we were getting ready to launch the EVP messages. And what I wanted to give them were some talk tracks of how to use those new EVP messages in common conversations they were having with candidates. So when I originally went out for the focus group discussions, the questions were, tell me the most common questions that you're getting for candidates and tell me the ones that are most difficult for you to understand. And then I had this vision in my mind of, I'm going to take all of those new EVP pillars, those new 4 pillars that we had, I'm going to give them some talk tracks on how to answer the common questions and how to answer the difficult questions. But then through those conversations, I mean, they always evolve, right? Like you go into a focus group with an idea of what you want to talk about, but then all of a sudden there's parking lot items and tangents that people are starting to talk about. And it was, yeah. And it was like, yeah, well, you know, if I go back to the Japan one, it's like, yeah, the sales reps there, you know, they don't know who we are. I think I heard the same thing from the Nordics region. Like the recruiters had to spend their time at the beginning of the conversation just telling them who Stryker was. And then trying to get into with those particular candidates, like what was important to them. So we were getting some like feedback just randomly within those conversations of, okay, we need to rethink, especially with sales reps, because that's such a huge piece of how we recruit or who we recruit at Stryker. And dialing that in a little bit better when we think about those EVP messages when we're going out externally too, and tying it together a little more. Yep. But you're right. I mean, they're the people in the trenches, right? Like they're the ones who are having the real conversation. They're the resource on what we need to be thinking about.
100%. Audra, haven't you done some of that too? Working to like do focus groups or like collect information so you can write the story on the other side?
We don't do formalized ones, but Ashley and I talk to the recruiters all the time about, you know, they'll say, oh, I have this rec that's, you know, difficult. So we'll talk to them and we'll ask all these kind of questions and like, or that's when we'll create like a persona for that role. Yeah. We don't already have one, so that we can create content, that kind of stuff. But it's nothing, we haven't done any formal focus groups, but now I'm thinking we need to start. I like it.
Yeah.
Personas is like on my list of things to do. Like we started going down that road last year and I just had too much on my plate, but yeah, we need to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you kind of already are creating them, just not formally.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. It would be good just to get them out on paper and be able to share it with the recruiting team so they can see it.
Yep.
So is your approach to personas to do something really overarching? Like these are the 4 personality types? Or are you going into the departments and doing like hard to fill personas?
Yeah. So my idea is that we start with the 4 really hard to fill areas for us. And then also sales. And that's because those are the most that we hire. So it makes sense to have something for them. But mostly I think focused on those hard to fill ones. And it's the same as I think a lot of people are like engineering. Hello, how are we going to do this? And how do we do it differently if we need to? So we'll see. That's my vision. I'm going to get a team, so I might actually have time to try to do some of this stuff. It's just going to be amazing.
Yeah. That's the number one request I've been getting lately
Really?
by far is recruiting personas, and specifically for sales. It's those like high volume, low retention roles where I think recruitment marketing has the biggest opportunity to make a huge impact in a really, really quickly, as opposed to where I think employer branding has great impact. It's kind of the fluffy impact, like you feel good. It's, but when you really dial in those high volume, low retention roles, that's where recruitment marketing can do the home runs.
Yeah. Trying to explain to someone what employment brand is, it's like,
we were just talking about that before we started. Like your mom asked you what you do, and you're like, oh.
Just change the subject.
Right.
Yeah. My parents are visiting for the long weekend right now, and I was telling them about this today, and my mom, of course, is like, I mean, tell me what you do again. How am I supposed to tell people what you do? And I finally, I'm just like, I just do marketing. We'll just call it that, right? And we'll move on.
Marketing for recruiting.
Right. What was your example about the Army? I love that. Didn't you have one that's like be all you can be? Like you would say it was.
Oh yeah. So like my family's all military. And so the example that I usually will give them is like, that be all you can be poster that everyone does, and like that's supposed to attract people to be in the Army. I do that for everyone else. And they're like, oh.
I like that. That's genius.
Yeah, they get it.
But
well, military family, right? Yeah.
It's perfect. But again, you're getting in the mind for them to make them understand, so that it's perfect sense. But you came in from completely from marketing side, right? Not even from HR recruitment. Can you share that? Because that's totally different.
Yeah. So the reason I got into social media, and you guys will laugh at this, mind you, this was, I'm going to age myself, 10, 12 years ago. My CEO came in my office. I shared the office with PR. I was doing business development at the time. Like I was 2 years out of school, just cranking. And he comes in and goes, how many Facebook friends do you have? And I was like, like 700 or something. Like it was pretty significant for the time. Yeah. Well, I started my Facebook page my first quarter of college.
You're like OG.
And so I am.
Yeah.
I am. No, I was like one of the people who got in because they were in college when it happened. Like, but anyway, and he goes, okay, you're in charge of social media. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm still like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Then we hired the former CMO of Netflix to be our CMO. And so she came from Silicon Valley, and I was living in DC at the time. She just had like a totally different perspective on recruiting and social media and kind of where the market was going. And she came to me and said, do you know what Tweeter is? And she said it just like that. Do you know what Tweeter is? And I was like, no. And she goes, I don't know what it is either, but you're going to be good at it. And so,
she was right.
And so that company was called Visual CV, and it was basically LinkedIn without the networking element, which was our major fail. And if I could go back and change anything in my career, that's the one thing I would have done.
Oh my God.
I know. Don't even get
right now, Katrina.
I could be so rich. But so I started doing marketing for HR technology companies and really started understanding kind of the recruiting world. So I went from Visual CV to Monster.com. I was their first social media hire. And starting to kind of understand how those conversations happen. And the biggest thing that I learned really early on was that the candidate voice really matters.
Yeah.
I've always been a writer. I was a comms major in college. And so literally as you kind of follow my career, which does not look linear at all, I took my writing and research skills and figured out how to apply them in different environments. So I was a director of marketing for a technology company that was like outside of recruiting. I did a $22 million TV buy for care.com. And then I was laid off from my job and I became a managing editor of Recruiting Daily. And that's where I always tell people, like, I got my PhD in recruiting. So I was talking to everyone. I was listening to everyone. I was interviewing people constantly and like writing all these articles. And you kind of get the, I guess, you know, like the book smart on what recruitment marketing could be, what employer branding could be, recruiting tactics, all that. That's how I know Steve and a few other people on this call. And so with that, I was like, okay, I'm done with marketing. Like, I am so done with this. I want to do it for people. And so I went to an RPO and I did employer branding, and I was a technical copywriter. And like Steve just said, I immersed myself in that. Like, obviously I started a company doing it. Like, I'm so into it because I just love people's stories. And I love that there's always a center of truth. So I think like through my whole path, that like I've just learned that people are the center of everything. And when you make it about them and not about you, that changes it. That like, I think that's what my marketing background taught me, was that like, it's not about your company. And so many people miss that story. Like yesterday, I was working on a graphic called the like 5 words that you should never use on your LinkedIn company profile. And I went to like what I would call serial offenders for bad copy. And what made them bad was that they were all about them. We are an industry leading, blah, blah, blah. We do this. We're top 10 retail, blah, blah, blah. It was never about the people. And you can't make them feel that if you don't feel that.
Yep. So it's so interesting to me that you came from marketing. I'm going to put my recruiter hat on and I'm going to ask a question now. So when you talked about like getting into the people side of it, I'm assuming it goes back to your sticky note where there was a lot of listening and asking questions. Like, how did you even get started in that so it's hard for me to think about doing this without being in recruiting at one point and understanding the candidate experience. But I know lots of people like you who started in marketing and are doing recruitment marketing. So how did you even like start understanding that whole candidate experience piece to really be able to portray it the right way?
Yeah. So I honestly, like even when I started my company, I went out and instead of selling, I went out and asked questions and interviewed people and said, I want your advice. Like, I just want to hear from you and like what's happening, what you're doing. And so that kind of guided me into what I wanted to learn about, if that makes sense. Like that kind of taught me everything that I needed to know. And I know that sounds weird. Like I would rather have 10 one-on-one conversations with people for 30 minutes just about like life and what's important and what they learned than read 10 blog posts. Yep. I read a lot of blog posts, but that
or white papers.
Helpful. Yeah, forget the white paper.
Those are the worst. Talk about all about the company and not about value, I think.
Exactly. We are in the age of like calculators and like buyer's guides right now. So just be wary, everyone. They all have bias. Trust. Audra, what's your story? Like, how did you get into this world?
Actually quite a bit similar to Tennille, so I don't have to go into it too much, but well, actually before that I started being a marrow donor recruitment, supervising people that were getting people to sign up for a registry to be marrow donors. So totally different, but kind of good experience, because if you can get someone to agree to possibly give like parts of their body or their blood, like you can probably maybe at least talk to them about a job. So that was very different. But after that, it was quite similar. The company was not doing so well, and I had to move around a lot because departments were shutting, and I ended up supporting a director of HR, and I kept seeing all these bills from a massive agency for these tons and tons of monies for like Monster and Facebook and all these things, and nobody knew like what they were doing. They didn't really understand what was working, what wasn't. And I was like, why is nobody like looking at this? Like, what's our cost per click on this Monster thing? Like, we're spending this much. And so I kind of just started doing it on myself, just like you did. As a side job, I always made sure, most importantly, I did my first job really well. Right. And I just did this on the side until I was like, check this awesome stuff out. And I started our Facebook careers page, which I don't know if it's that exciting, but just things like that, because we were paying the agency for a Facebook page that was empty. I was like, what?
Don't even get me started.
So I just started
Don't
putting
even get me started on agency fluff.
Yeah. And in the end, we ended up ditching the agency down the road once I made it a job, which they didn't like, but I did. But yeah, I went to like all of our like junior nurses and I interviewed them and asked questions and tried to tell their story. And it just, you know, as a side job. And then I just pitched it and I said, look, this needs to be a job. What do you think? And she was so amazing that she gave me a shot. And I didn't stay with that company though, only because they were having really tough culture issues. And it was just tricky to be honest and say it's a great place to work. But I went over to the vendor side, which was awesome because I got a whole different view of it. So now when I internally are talking to vendors, I can just call them out on their BS, which is awesome because without that experience, I wouldn't know that, you know, some of these things are rubbish. So very similar to yours. I just started doing it on the side and showing numbers and just pitching that it was an idea. And I was just lucky enough to have a really supportive director, Suzanne Parsons. I have to thank her for like everything for my career.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we're getting tons of questions on the side. I've seen like 3 now about like resources for people that say are recruiters that just want to either learn more or, you know, potentially one day get into a recruitment marketing role. And I have some ideas, but I don't know if you guys have any. I could start if not.
I have a super biased answer, and then I have another answer.
Your
So my super biased answer is that 3 Years Media has a recruitment marketing library. The URL is literally recruitmentmarketinglibrary.com. And so it is literally, it's just images that give you like a stat or something that you can use. Like we were just talking about white papers, right? I don't like white papers. I don't like to read books. I like to read books, but not about recruiting. Like books, like stories, you know?
Well, the problem with books and recruiting is it changes too fast. If you see one come out now, it's 2 years old. It's totally different. I feel like there's some great ones, don't get me wrong, but that's tough.
And I would say that my second one it's a little non-conformist, but I really like to follow hashtags as they're happening. So I have a few columns. So whenever an event is happening that I can't attend, I'll follow that hashtag and I'll read up on it afterwards. And that's how I get a lot of that. Yeah. And people will be like, oh, are you at this conference? And I'm like, nope, just reading, just following along. And then I also have like a search column for hashtag employer brand, hashtag recruitment marketing, hashtag recruiting. They're all ors because you can do Boolean strings in Twitter. I use a thing called Tweetin that does like my search columns. But so I follow that pretty regularly, and I try to make time at least twice a week to just read the hashtag. Yeah. And that gives me real time what people are talking about instead of buying into someone's ebook, white paper, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that's where I keep up on stuff.
Katrina, you really figured out that twitting thing.
I tried. The tweeter. I am quite good at the tweeter.
Tweeter, there it is.
Tweeter, yeah.
I've got a couple of podcasts that really helped me because I didn't come from the marketing side, and I wish I had gotten a degree in marketing. That would have been so useful, but I didn't. So I wanted to share a couple of podcasts that I think are huge and not recruitment ones, which is why I think it's cool.
Yeah.
So one is called The Science of Social Media, which is by Buffer. So that's all about, you know, social media and then you can then take that and figure out how to use it for recruitment. Another one is, this was one of my favorites, but it's kind of specific, but it's called Perpetual Traffic. And it's all about Facebook ads. So you can learn to do them on YouTube in a couple of hours. And then this podcast will teach you tips and tricks. And you can just listen to it in the car and what changes, because Facebook ads change all the time. And it's just fun one to listen to. And then I think I have one or two more.
We're both taking notes. We're like,
I know. I'm like, ooh.
A couple more. One that is a recruitment one, but it does talk about like recruitment marketing a lot, and I love it. I would say it's Talent Cast by James Ellis. That's Talent Cast. He talks about a lot of different recruitment marketing pieces, which I love that. Yep. And I have one more. This one actually, Katrina, you won't need, but I definitely needed. It's called Copy Blogger. And it's all about like copywriting and blogging. And for me, again, that's not a place I came from and I have to struggle a little. So it's useful for me to listen to her and get ideas about writing. And then the last one is marketing school, which is just these two guys, and they're really short ones, which I kind of like because I have a short attention span, and they about anything to do with marketing. Super useful, but I can put a link to all of those. They're all in one place. But
those are super to the recap as well, and all the links and all that. The one that I would add to that list really quick is actually Mike Kim. If you just look him up, I'm pretty sure his URL is like Mike Kim TV. He has been incredibly influential in every aspect of my business, how I do recruitment marketing. Like he's so good. I highly, highly recommend him.
Is it a podcast or more of
it is a podcast and a blog kind of thing. He goes back and forth format wise. But what he talks about is kind of the like bare bones basics and how you can influence people from the inside instead of being like, no, if I send an email, 10% of those people will respond. He's like, no. You need to send an email that's personal and it needs to be first and blah, blah, blah. Like it's solid. How about you, Tennille? What do you listen to or read?
So this might be another shameless plug, and I'm not doing it on purpose. But when I started, this was my best. So if you don't have it and you're trying to figure it out,
I keep it next to me always.
Yeah. So and I was very lucky. I don't know if you guys know Mira at Greenland at Career Arc. She actually sent this to me as a gift when we first started talking, and I had never heard of it. And I literally sat at the coffee shop one night and was just like mad scramble taking notes on the stuff that I could go back and try to start applying. And so there's some really good ideas in there on like how to make that business case and where to get started. And if you don't have an EVP, like how you even get going down that road. And then I use it as a reference. Like I'll go back and be like, I need to figure out a metric that shows more ROI to this particular business. And so, so it's been a great tool.
It's funny because it says for dummies, but it's for beginners, but it also is useful for people that are in the field as well.
Yeah. And Mira's note was very nice. It was like, I know you're not a dummy, but I thought this might be helpful on what you're about to do.
Yeah. So, good point. Very nice. She's awesome.
Yeah.
I have one other book.
I also love the Facebook groups where all of us can get together. That is a huge resource for me. I'm maybe a habitual question asker, so maybe I should apologize to everyone, but there's so much good conversation there. And I love that this group of people is so willing to share what they're working on. Like, I feel like in traditional marketing, and Katrina, you might know this better than I do, but it's very much like, don't share the secret sauce with other people. Oh my gosh. Right?
I hate the secret sauce conversation because I'm like, no, ideas are free. Right. Execution.
Yes. Yeah. And what works for me could be the same idea as somebody else, but I'm doing it a little bit differently, or my industry is different. And so I just love the collaboration. I mean, I learned so much from people in those two Facebook groups. They've been huge for me.
I think that's what benefit too of being in recruitment marketing or employer branding. It's a smaller community, which I love, because if you work in marketing, so does every other person and their mother, and there's no community almost because it's so big.
Call yourself a social media agency and you're immediately part of like one of the largest groups in America.
Right. So how can you collaborate? There's just no real community, where I feel like we have that.
I do too.
I'm really lucky.
So if we turn,
and this is one other book on it.
Oh yeah.
Shout out for just marketing and storytelling. So it's not a recruitment book, but again, for that was good for me because I wanted, the other side of things. So this is good for storytelling. I like that too.
I would add to that storytelling list. I just read a book called Callings from StoryCorps. And Steve asked this earlier, what's something outside of recruitment marketing that really influences you? It's called Callings. The book, that's simply the title. And it's a collection of StoryCorps stories. So if anyone on the line doesn't listen to StoryCorps, they're basically, so you and someone go into a room for 45 minutes and you talk. And StoryCorps records it as part of the National History Museum in the Smithsonian because they want to capture the stories of the world from the bottom up, because history is always told from the top down. And so this book is all from people who have found their calling in work. And the reason I like it so much is a few reasons. Number one, I also have a short attention span. So they're really short stories, like 3 pages, 4 pages, maybe. It's like a clip of their overall story. But what was so interesting to me is how every single person has found passion no matter where they are in life. So these are people who are bridge watchers. Literally, this person's job is to sit in a little house and watch a bridge. Just watch it. And she's like, I know when the whales come in. I know when my seal comes down the road, and I watch people contemplate suicide. Like, I have saved people's lives. You know what I mean? And you would never even think of it. And I think there's something really powerful about reading first-person stories. So it can, one, remind us of why we do this, and what Steve said, like the secret sauce of recruitment marketing, being human and not lying. Like, when you read a real story, I think it just gives you a shift, you know?
Yeah.
So we got a question earlier on the social media side that I thought was really interesting, is creating content for social media for your recruitment marketing or your employer brand. So in my head, social media is technically recruitment marketing, because recruitment marketing is the activity, and employer brand is like your EVP and all that fluffy stuff that you keep at your house. So, Tennille, why don't you go first? When you're kind of figuring out what a social media message might look like, where do you start? Kind of how do you create that?
Oh boy. So going back to that, the branding committee that we put together in collecting those stories, I'm probably very lucky. I have a pretty good library of stuff, so I generally don't suffer trying to find content right now, which was not the case a few years ago when I was begging people to like let me take your picture and couple of lines, right? Like I would like walk around and like, tell me why you love to work here, right? And then
We've all done that.
We've all been there. Yep. Can you please say something good? I need a sound bite.
Just look happy. You don't have to actually be happy. Just let me take your picture and look happy.
And then here's $20 when we're done. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Here's a Amazon gift card. Yeah.
So I have an extensive editorial calendar that I build at the end of the year before, and I kind of scope out what I think we want to talk about. I look for really fun holidays that we can build into, right? So we did Embrace Your Inner Geekiness Day. We do like Left-Handers Day, and then we do some of the more broad traditional holidays. I kind of focus all those out, and then I also set aside time to do spotlights on specific functions that I know that we're having a hard time recruiting for. So if you follow Stryker, please do follow Stryker. But if you're we're doing a spotlight on compliance later this month. And so I go out and ask the talent branding team to come back with interviews from people who work in compliance, or we'll ask people that I know in compliance, and we'll schedule a whole week of just focusing on that. So we call it like a functional spotlight. We also do location spotlights. So we're just opening a brand new building in Germany, an innovation center. We did a spotlight on them. We've done spotlights all around the globe, again, to kind of give that global feel. So when we're putting that editorial calendar together, I kind of know a little bit based on our data of what we need to focus on. And then I'm getting that content and those employee stories, and it's just kind of piecing them together into different storylines that I know that we want to highlight. That's kind of how we get started. But I'm with you.
What tool do you use for your calendar?
What's that?
What tool do you use for your editorial calendar? Curious.
Don't get excited. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and it's
an Excel sheet.
That's totally fine.
Nothing.
Totally works. Whatever works.
The Excel sheet is so much easier, and it does not require like a bug or something. Like, don't even. I 100% am a fan of Excel sheets on that.
It just works, and it's free. So how do you beat that?
Yeah, but then how do you upload like a photo to go with the content in Excel? Can you?
Link it to the Google Drive folder.
Put a link in there, slap a link in there. Copy paste a JPEG on top of the box where the image is supposed to go.
Sure.
Yeah. How about you, Audra? How do you build a social media calendar?
Well, we're very, very lucky, I think, that we have a hiring plan that is like literally set in stone. And of course, it's a bit fluid as things change, but it's pretty amazing for the whole year. And ideally, we get it in January. And so then we can look at that to say, we need more sales or, R&D, more in Q, whatever it is. so we can think ahead as much as possible. And we try and really focus on the tough to fill, like you said, and create content around. And then, we look at those people and we try and create like videos that would be valuable to them, but not necessarily even about the company. That's something I'm really focused on. So like we're going to Grace Hopper. So we did a video on tips you need to know for your first Grace Hopper conference. But then at the end, there's a little, hey, and we're Tennille. But really, it's just trying to like, what do those people really want to hear? We did a video about this thing called Kubernetes because it's kind of a new thing. It showcases us using this new tool. It's attractive, but it was about what is that? It wasn't about us. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to really create content that's just valuable, and it can be tricky, but it all comes down to talking to your recruiters, like you said, to get a feel for.
Yeah, we'll point to like industry articles, like here are the top 5 things you know about going into an interview, because I want them getting something out of it too. Otherwise, they're going to tune out and they don't want to hear about us and our company all the time.
Yeah, and also, you can share other content too. You don't have to create everything. It's great if you have, but if it's valuable and it's not from you, hey, it's still coming from your page.
So whenever I build personas, one of the questions that I ask people is, when you wake up in the morning and you grab your phone, what are the first 3 apps you click?
Nice.
And so because we're on those like high volume, right, it helps infuse our recruiting strategy, and we kind of know what we're going to say and what we're going to do. And so I've even gone as far as asking someone like, hey, can I see your phone? And they're like, and I'm like, okay, literally, I'm going to scan. I'm going to go to your Instagram feed and I'm going to look at the activity, and I want to see what your friends look at.
Awesome.
That's a good idea.
So you can see like what they've liked and what they do, and you can translate that into the conversation. And it's worked really, really well so far. Like really, really well. Better than a lot of the traditional stuff that I've done. Yeah. Because I'm just like, what do you do first?
And that's useful to say.
Shows intent.
And that's so useful to then say, okay, where are we going to put this content? Okay, I've got this great video, but if I put it on Facebook and they don't even have Facebook on their phone, that's a waste. So you got to put it in the right places. Yeah, absolutely. We have a big, long question from Noelle. Whenever you take Katrina, do you see it?
Bring it, Noelle. Let's do this.
Looks like a good one. All right, I would love to hear some of the questions you kick off your conversations when you're trying to talk to employees, and why they choose to work for your company, and what differentiates. That's good. We haven't talked too much about that, but differentiates you from other places. I find myself asking the same questions, and sometimes they don't land with individuals to really dive into their passions. So that's great. Yeah. What kind of questions? And you said a few, Katrina. What other kind of questions do you ask employees?
So there's some nuance to this based on the company and kind of what we're trying to do in the end. But one question I ask specifically to get to the differentiators, I ask, what's different about this team than any other team you've ever worked with before?
Nice. Yeah, so you don't say the same thing. Everyone's
and it's your team, right? It's not what's different about this company, because most people are not connected to their company. If we go back to why do people quit, right? They quit because of their manager. They quit because they have a bad team. Those are top 2 always. It doesn't matter who does the survey, whatever. So ultimately, when it boils down, what's different about your team? What's different about your people? What makes them special? Yeah. If you can get that, then you can start to talk about the team in a totally different way. The other question that I really like to ask, in addition to the whole what do you do first thing in the morning, is tell me about a really good day.
At work.
So what has to happen to make today like a really good day for you? Tell me about your last awesome day. I have yet to experience that, honestly. Yeah. Because you're not going to submit somebody who's like a little shit to your somebody who's like pissy to your list, right? Yeah. And mind you, I've done global. For my last huge project, we did 200 surveys, like 200 interviews. And not one person couldn't tell me about what a good day looks like. And for some people, I get off work early and I can go pick up my kid, and I have the flexibility to just like go pick up my kid. And for other people, I was sitting on an airplane and I talked to somebody who told me about their hip, and for other people, it's down to work. And you start to notice trends within divisions of what makes a good day. And again, just infuses the conversation. A great day at Stryker, I'm making this up, a great day at Stryker can be a great day for you. Yep. And then you start, you know, sitting on a plane, sitting in a train.
She just did the be all you can be. She just did it on the fly. Just
that's what I was gonna say.
That's what I'm good at. And Audra can tell you this, like, words are my thing. I can do that when I have a story. And like just talking to you for this half hour, I can talk about Stryker now. You know what I mean? Like I would feel comfortable talking about it and saying like, this is powerful stuff. And so I think it's down to the personal questions. That was a really long-winded answer. Your turn. Questions. What questions are you asking?
So I also ask a team question, like, why do you love your team? And because people is such a big piece around here, you usually get that's a good conversation starter. I also really wanted to be real. And so one of the questions that we ask is, what do you really struggle with in the company or in your job? And we'll use that sometimes. Like, we don't want to just sugarcoat it like life is all, you know, dancing through the daffodils and rainbows and unicorns around here. Like, we have real business issues that we have to deal with. And so we'll sprinkle that in. I mean, I'm not out there putting doomsday messages, but I also want them to get like a real feel, like these are real business challenges and these are the things that our people are working on. So, and when you get somebody talking about the challenge, you can usually get to the passion point from that, because they're frustrated because I can't do this, or I want to try this or whatever. And then you're like, oh, that's the thing. And then you can start kind of through that.
Yeah. We do something similar with our videos. We'll ask like some standard questions, and then we'll see like one question will kind of spark and they'll get like a little excited, and we'll stick on that. And I've seen that and then they'll go into a story, and we just drop the rest of the questions because this is the thing for them that they're passionate about.
Isn't it awesome when you see the video footage come back and you just see the light and you're like, yes, we nailed it. We got it. Yep. That was it.
Or the opposite, when you don't see it and you're like, oh.
Or somebody's just like really boring. Yeah. And like, I just can't use this. Yeah.
Yeah. No. How am I going to tell that person I can't use this?
Yeah. Then you just say, we had some technical issues with the video, so we couldn't use it.
I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. Although I would say if that person is like, maybe they're super awkward and weird on video, but that's the whole team and that's what they're like, get out there, because you want to be authentic. I used the word.
You nailed it. No, you totally nailed it though, because I think that's where most of us get it wrong, is that we assume what people care about. Example, I have done a lot of like engineer kind of stuff, right? And they're like, oh, help me fill my product team. And I'm like, oh, great. You and everyone else. My top talent competitors are Google. Yeah, you and everyone else, buddy. But they always assume that those people care most about tech. And it's not true. I have yet to be in a scenario where I was pipelining product and technical people where they said that the tech was the number one reason. Not once.
I'm going to take this video and I'm going to go back to show it to all the engineering managers in our company.
Yep. No, I seriously, I swear by this. Not once have I ever heard them say product is their number one thing. They're humans. I know this is crazy, but engineers are humans and they actually care about perks and people. And like the last company I did it for, a company all of us have heard of, they would tell you that all those engineers, they cared about flexible work schedules.
Really?
That's all they wanted. They wanted to be able to go and pick their kid up at 2:00 and get no guilt for it. They were willing to work hard when it needed to be, and they always were really goal oriented, but that's what they cared about, flexible schedule.
Wow. That just shows you can't assume.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, marketers do that all the time, and that's why when we go out to another example. Sorry. So yesterday I was on Twitter, and I asked people why they go to conferences. If you ask an HR tech vendor why people go to conferences, you know what they're going to tell you? Speakers. You know what those people told me? Not speakers. They want to learn something. They look at the agenda and they want to see a title of something they want to learn. The end. So they really don't care
what they're talking about more than the people, the names.
Yep.
That's really good.
That's so probably true now that I think about it.
Yep.
I mean, there are some people that I would look at it and I go, oh, I'd want to see that person. But more often I'm like, what's the rest of the day look like? I want to do that. I don't want to do that.
Exactly. That's like picking shoes because they have a logo on the side, not because they fit.
Yeah.
Oh. Drops the ball.
Somebody else said that. I totally stole that.
Oh, we only have 1 minute left, guys. We're gonna have to definitely have you back because I have so many more questions. But before it actually comes out, yeah, I want to make sure we get. How can people connect with you? Is LinkedIn best or
LinkedIn's great. Yep. And then my email is tennille.folk@stryker.com. So feel free to reach out and happy to chat.
And she might be hiring.
Another shameless plug. If you know anyone in Europe in EB who would be interested in a job.
Yeah, actually, I might have a reference now that I think of it.
Me too.
I will get you a gift card, Audra. So.
But next week, I think you're back, Katrina, right? Next week?
Next week we are off, right?
Oh, so it's one after.
Because of HR Tech. And then the following week I am back. Yes.
Yep. So September 21st. Yep, is the next one. And then that's Holland McHugh from Delta Airlines, who was also at the Talent Brand Summit with us.
Yes, she's at our table. She's awesome.
Ass. Yep. Yeah, she's awesome. And she's doing she's like just ramping up there. So she'll have some really good advice on kind of how to get started as maybe a new addition to an employer brand team. Like, what do you do first?
Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tennille. That was great. I have to watch it back
thank you.
to get stuff from
that was
so awesome.
I was super nervous, and this was like just hanging out with buddies. So I love
Told you. Coffee on the couch.
Awesome. And thank you, everyone on the side.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Take
We'll see you
care.
soon. Bye.